She said, "If you can't afford the flight, just stay behind." I stared at my phone, and all I heard was silence. Silence I've known since I was a kid. "Hi, I'm Lauren. I used to think staying quiet was love. But what would you do if silence started costing you everything? Tell me in the comments, does family mean giving or being seen?" "Flights are $1,800 each," Mom said, her voice slicing through the line as if we were just discussing weather. "If you cannot afford it, stay behind." That was it. No pause. No, "I wish you could come." No, "We'll try to help." Just a price tag. I looked around my apartment where sunlight barely filtered through the crooked blinds. My kitchen smelled faintly of yesterday's burnt toast. A half-eaten yogurt sat on the counter, and the fridge buzzed louder than usual. On it, a cluster of faded sticky notes curled at the edges. "March rent due. You got this. Groceries, $60 max." I stood there holding my phone, hearing her breath through the speaker. My chest felt hollow, like someone had knocked the wind out of me without touching me. "All right," I said, "thanks for the heads up." I tapped the red button. And that was that. I wasn't invited. I was expected. Expected to show up, book my flight, find my way, be pleasant, and stay quiet. Expected to be helpful, useful, invisible. Again. That afternoon, I sat at my desk at work, mechanically moving my mouse just enough to keep the screen awake. Outside, spring tried to make Portland hopeful. Cherry blossoms flared on the sidewalks. Couples walked by holding lattes and reusable bags. Inside, I scrolled through my bank app. Checking, savings, credit. No miracles there. I was still $600 behind on the dental work from last year. Marin's hospital bill, that emergency appendectomy, had knocked out the rest. Mom said she'd figure it out, but I ended up covering most of it because Marin cried and said, "I can't tell Derek. He'll be furious." Lauren to the rescue. Always. David showed up at my cubicle around 3. He didn't say anything at first, just placed a scone on the edge of my desk. "Last one," he said. "Fight me for it." I glanced up, managed a half smile. "Cranberry?" "The good kind." "You sure?" He shrugged. "I had 2 already. My conscience needs a break." I didn't want it, but I took it. Warm food, even a stale office scone, was comfort. He didn't press for why I looked like I hadn't slept. That was the thing about David. He gave you space, but not distance. I picked at the scone slowly, listening to the soft clatter of keyboards and the office printer exhaling in the background. For a moment, I imagined what it would be like to work somewhere warm, near the ocean, with fresh papayas and early sunrises. Then Marin's voice returned in my head, all sparkle and entitlement. "The vow renewal will be so magical. Just family and close friends. We're thinking barefoot on the beach." I chewed harder. That evening, I opened my budgeting spreadsheet. My laptop wheezed as it booted. The screen flickered, as if dreading the numbers as much as I did. I made a new tab. Maui. Flight, 1-800. Hotel, unknown. Transport, Uber, rental, food, probably not covered. Gifts. Of course, there had to be a gift. The irony? 2 months ago, Marin forgot my birthday. Again. She sent a late "happy belated, sis" text with a gif of a cupcake. That was it. And now, I was expected to fly across the ocean to celebrate her marriage again. I remembered Thanksgiving last year. I'd brought groceries, spent over $300, loaded my car with stuffing, sweet potatoes, turkey breast, cooked for hours in Marin's kitchen, while Ellen sat drinking wine and talking about Derek's new real estate venture. When it was time for the family photo, I was still washing dishes. Marin didn't wait. The next morning, she posted it on Instagram. Everyone tagged, everyone smiling, except me, because I wasn't in it. I stood up, paced a bit. My apartment was silent except for the hum of traffic 3 floors below. This wasn't about the trip. It never was. It was the pattern, the way I was always the reliable one, the one who showed up, cleaned up, shut up, the one who got the short end of the stick, politely. I walked to the fridge, stared at the mess of notes. I peeled off an old grocery receipt and started writing on the back. Trip, flight 1-800, resentment, incalculable. I pinned it back up next to another note that read, "You're stronger than you think." I wasn't sure I believed that anymore. I grabbed my phone and opened the calculator, tapped in 1-800, then another 200, then 80, then 300. Then I just let my finger rest on the screen. Let's do the math, I thought. All of it. Every penny I'd given, every memory I'd swallowed, every birthday forgotten, every hug that came with a caveat, every love you that felt more like a receipt than a feeling. Let's do the math, Lauren. Let's see what your worth is. Outside, the sunset turned the sky apricot. I stood there, still holding the phone, knowing full well that this trip was never about Maui. It was about where I stood in this family, and whether I still wanted to stand there at all. They say memory softens over time. Mine didn't. If anything, it got sharper, like a knife I'd left in the drawer too long, now gleaming under fluorescent light. It started with my Venmo history. I hadn't looked at it in years. Not really. I used to scroll quickly past the names. Marin, Mom, Marin, Derek, groceries, dental, emergency vet, deposit. I'll pay you back. Just until Friday. You're a lifesaver. Now I sat cross-legged on my couch, my laptop warm on my thighs, a blank Excel spreadsheet open on the screen. I titled it, Invoice, Emotional Damages, Optional. My cursor blinked like it was waiting for me to finally tell the truth. 2016, San Diego. I was 28, working part-time at a nonprofit and waiting tables on weekends. Marin was planning her bachelorette party in Palm Springs. It was supposed to be low-key, but somehow that turned into poolside cabanas, massages, custom tote bags, and champagne towers. I couldn't go, couldn't afford the flight, let alone the hotel, but I wired her $300 anyway. She said it would even things out for not attending. Her text came with a string of emojis. I never got a thank you, only a photo later. Moran, with her bridesmaids in matching robes, holding up a glittery sign that read, "Too glam to give a damn." I gave. She never asked me if I had anything left. 2018, Sacramento. Mom called from the dentist's parking lot. "It's $940 total, honey," she said, voice low like she was embarrassed. I thought insurance would cover more. I'd been planning a trip to Chicago with college friends. I hadn't seen them in years. I canceled the flight, told them I had to work, sent Mom the money that night. She called me an angel. That same week, she posted a photo on Facebook from a brunch with Marin, captioned, "My favorite girl always keeping me smiling." There was no mention of me, there never was. 2021, Seattle. Derek's car broke down on his way to some real estate convention. Marin called me, frantic. "He's stranded, Lo. Can you help? It's just $600 for the repairs. He'll Venmo you next week." I sent it. He never Venmo'd me, never even texted. To this day, I don't think he knows my birthday. I added line items to the spreadsheet. Date, amount, who asked, what for. I colored Marin's rose pink, Mom's blue, Derek's gray. It looked like a museum of disappointment. Each cell buzzed with memory. But what burned wasn't the money. It was the silence that came after. The way favors became expectations. The way gratitude turned into guilt. Mine. The totals began to climb. $3,580 over 7 years. And those were just the ones I could trace. I hadn't even included the dinners, the forgotten gifts, the canceled plans. This wasn't generosity. This was conditioning. I had been trained to say yes, even when it meant saying no to myself. I sat back, rubbed my eyes, and stared at the numbers. Some people kept scrapbooks of family memories. I had this Excel sheet, an archive of quiet sacrifices and polite betrayals. Around 1:47 a.m., I hovered over the file. Then I hit Save As and renamed it Legacy XLSX. I laughed, dry and bitter. Was this my inheritance? Not a trust fund, not heirlooms, just a history of paying so others could smile in pictures I wasn't invited to take. I should have closed the laptop. Instead, I opened Gmail. The cursor blinked again, expectant. I wrote 3 lines. Subject, for your records. Please find attached. No response required. Lauren. I attached the file. Send it to Mom, Maran, and Derek. I didn't expect a reply. Not really. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was about being seen, about letting them know that I'd finally seen myself. The apartment was silent, the kind of silence you earn after years of noise. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water. The fridge buzzed quietly, the only witness to my midnight mutiny. I left the laptop open, the email still sitting in the sent folder like a confession I couldn't unsend. Then, at 4:23 a.m., my phone lit up. Marin, you really just invoiced your own mother? No greeting, no punctuation beyond the question mark, not even a shocked emoji. I stared at the screen. I didn't reply. I just stared long enough that my reflection in the dark glass started to look like someone I hadn't met before, someone sharper. I didn't expect an apology. I expected silence, and they exceeded that expectation. 3 days had passed since I sent the invoice. The family important group chat remained eerily quiet. No memes, no birthday reminders, not even the usual forwarded prayer chain from Aunt Rhonda. Just silence. The same kind of silence I knew well, the one my mother used when I disappointed her. I remembered being 12, standing in the kitchen with a crumpled report card and a C+ circled in red. She didn't say a word for 3 days, not even a look, just absence. When she finally did speak, her words were, "You embarrassed me." And here I was again, 39 years old, and still somehow the one who'd done the embarrassing. At work, I kept my head down. Even the break room coffee smelled accusatory. The hum of the microwave felt louder than usual. David found me staring at a vending machine I had no intention of using. "They out of peanut M&Ms again?" he asked, offering a crooked smile. I shook my head. "No, just considering the nutritional value of gum." He handed me a coffee, my usual 2 creams, no sugar. "You okay?" It was the kind of question that could have unraveled me, but I just nodded, clutching the warm cup like a life raft. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A name I hadn't seen pop up in a while. Dad, Tom, calling. I stepped outside to answer. Portland spring was in full bloom, the kind that pretends to be summer for 3 hours, then returns to gray. He stood by his car, parked a bit awkwardly in the visitor spot. He looked older than I remembered. Same windbreaker, same hesitance in his eyes. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded check. "It's blank," he said, holding it out like a peace offering. "Write whatever makes it better." I didn't take it. "I'm not mad," I said, surprising even myself with the calm in my voice. "I'm just done." He blinked. "They didn't mean harm, you know, it's just how things have always been." "That's exactly the problem." He nodded, stuffed the check back in his pocket. "Your mother, she doesn't know how to fix this." "I'm not asking her to." We stood in silence, the wind rustling the leaves like an audience unsure whether to applaud. He gave me a half hug, the kind dads give when they don't know if they're welcome. When I came back inside, David was waiting by the glass doors with 2 plastic-wrapped sandwiches. "Turkey or egg salad?" he asked. I took the turkey, smiled faintly. "You always assume I'll say no to egg salad?" "I just think you deserve the better sandwich today." We didn't talk much during our break. We sat on the steps behind the building, overlooking the delivery trucks and a patch of stubborn weeds poking through the pavement. Quiet wasn't awkward with him. It was breathable. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text in the family group thread. "Marin, you're blowing this out of proportion. It's not that deep." Of course. When I paid her hospital bill, it was real. When I paid for groceries, plane tickets, car repairs, all real. But my anger? My boundary? Too much. I typed, then erased, then typed again. "Lauren, going forward, please don't include me in things that assume I'll pay for others. Thank you." And I hit send. No emojis, no explanations, just truth. Seconds passed. Then came the reply I'd anticipated like an unwelcome guest. "Ellen, we raised you better than this." I stared at the words, raised, as if my boundaries were a betrayal, as if better meant quieter, more convenient, always available. I turned my phone face down. David glanced at me. "Bad news?" I shook my head. "No, just the usual." We finished our lunch in silence. Before heading back inside, he reached into his pocket and handed me a tiny folded note. "It's a quote I like," he said. "Thought you might too." I opened it later that night. "No one is obligated to remain where they are no longer seen." I read it 3 times, then stuck it on the fridge, right beside the faded Post-it notes of budgeting reminders and quotes I'd once used to keep myself afloat. "You raised me to be convenient," I whispered, not to my mother, but to myself, as a kind of release. And this time, the silence that followed felt like peace. When therapy asked me what I wanted from my family, I said, to be seen as something other than a wallet. I hadn't planned to say it out loud, but once the words came, they stayed. The therapy office was small, with a waiting area that smelled faintly of lavender and something herbal. The clock ticked too loudly, and the air conditioner groaned like it hadn't been serviced since 2015. Still, it felt better than home. It felt neutral. My therapist, Michelle, was gentle in a way that wasn't pitying. She didn't nod excessively or lean in like on TV. She just waited. Like a person who knew silence wasn't awkward when you were figuring out how to name something you'd never dared name before. I stared at a crack in the window frame while I talked. I said things like, "I don't think they meant to hurt me, and maybe I let it happen." Classic. Michelle asked, "What keeps you saying yes?" I gave her the answer I had rehearsed all my life, because they're my family. Then came the pause. And what keeps you staying? That one hit deeper. I didn't answer right away. Maybe it was guilt, or fear of being alone, or the desperate hope that one day they'd wake up and just see me. After the session, I walked home instead of taking the bus. June in Portland meant damp sidewalks, surprise sunshine, and the occasional smell of someone barbecuing way too early in the day. I stopped by a cafe and grabbed an iced tea, then took the long way home. My apartment greeted me with the same cluttered kindness it always had. Books stacked unevenly, throw pillows that never stayed upright, and the pile of unopened mail I kept promising to sort. I dropped my bag and sat on the floor, back against the fridge. I checked my phone. One voicemail. From Mom. I didn't play it right away. I stared at the little red dot like it was pulsing guilt. When I finally hit play, her voice filled the kitchen, syrupy and soft. Hi, honey, just wanted to say, families don't bill each other. That's not love, that's something else. I hope you're okay. Let's talk when you're ready. I miss you. Click. She always had a way of saying things that sounded gentle but landed like ice water. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my closet and began pulling out boxes. Old journals, receipts, birthday cards, with Love Mom scrawled beneath $0 checks. I flipped through a notebook from college, a scribbled note from Maran asking for help with rent, a sticky note from me. Don't forget to Venmo her again. I sat cross-legged, surrounded by paper and memories that didn't feel warm, just transactional. One journal entry caught my eye. Mom forgot my 13th birthday, said she was busy with Marin's dance recital. I got a cupcake the next day, store-bought, no candle. That was the same year she asked me to help pay for Marin's party dress. I exhaled slowly and stood up. My fingers itched for action. I started decluttering, not like I had before, where I moved things from one drawer to another. This time I meant it. Receipts went into the shredder, old clothes into donation bags. I even tossed the chipped mug that read, "Number 1 daughter." I had bought it myself. No one had ever noticed. The voicemail blinked on my screen again. I hovered for a second, then deleted it. No reply, no apology requested, no further discussion. Then I blocked her number. It wasn't loud or triumphant, it was steady, like closing a window before it rains. The next morning, I woke up to silence. Not absence, just peace. No buzzing group chat, no voice messages layered in guilt, just birds outside the window and the hum of the refrigerator. I made coffee without checking my phone, took a shower, and even put on real clothes instead of the usual weekend sweatshirt. David texted mid-morning, "You around today?" I replied, "Yep, just reorganizing my entire emotional existence." "You?" He didn't ask questions. That's what I liked about him. A kind of quiet permission to just be, without explanation. Around noon, he stopped by with a paper bag, scones from a bakery I'd once offhandedly mentioned liking. "Don't say I never support local businesses," he joked, handing me the bag. I smiled and motioned him inside. We didn't talk about the email, or the voicemail, or the history weighing down my chest like wet laundry. We just sat, him on the couch, me cross-legged on the floor again, this time surrounded by clean surfaces and sunlight. "This place looks lighter," he said. I nodded. So do I. Later that day, I opened my laptop to check an old email account I barely used. It was the one I gave to family for formal things. Wedding invites, birthday chains, awkward family newsletters. I was about to archive everything when one unread message caught my eye. Subject: Coffee? From Marissa W., Derek's ex. My stomach tensed. I hadn't spoken to Marissa in years. Last I heard, she'd moved back to Reno and blocked Derek on everything but LinkedIn. The preview line of the email read, "It's about Derek, and maybe about you too." I clicked. "Hi, Lauren. I hope this isn't weird. I got your email from the wedding spreadsheet Marin sent out years ago. I wouldn't reach out unless it mattered. Can we talk? There's something I think you should know about Derek and about how things went down with your sister. If you're open, coffee's on me. I'm in Portland next weekend. Marissa." I stared at the screen for a long time. Something about the tone, tentative, direct, not dramatic, made me curious and uneasy. I wasn't sure I wanted to know whatever she wanted to tell me, but I also wasn't sure I could afford not to. My finger hovered over reply. Then I typed, "Sure, name a time." I didn't expect the email to mean anything. "Coffee?" it said, followed by Marissa's name, a name I hadn't heard in almost a year, maybe longer. Derek's ex, or almost ex, or maybe on again, off again, I never kept track. But something in her tone, clipped, direct, tired, felt different. So I agreed. We met at a little cafe tucked behind a bookstore in southeast Portland. It smelled like over-roasted beans and wet umbrellas. Marissa looked the same, only a little more frayed around the edges. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her nails were chipped. She looked like someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. "I won't waste your time," she said after we ordered. "I think your brother-in-law stole from me, but that's not even why I called. Your name's on one of the accounts." My stomach did a strange flip. "What?" She pulled out a folder, a literal manila folder like it was 1997, and flipped it open. "This loan," she tapped one page, "was opened in 2020, auto repair company, but your name's on the co-signature." I froze. Flashback. I was working late. Derek popped by unannounced. Something about needing help co-signing a small line of credit for tools he needed. "It's nothing, Lore," he'd said. "You're just the backup name. Won't affect anything. I just need to get it moving." I had been exhausted, distracted, and stupid. Now, staring at the documents Marissa laid out, my name was there in block letters, my address, my old phone number. "You didn't know?" she asked. "No," I said. "I had no idea." We sat there in silence, two women bound not by friendship, but by proximity to the same man. Then she said it. "You should check your credit. I found 3 more accounts. If he used your info once, he probably did it again." Back home that night, I opened my laptop and logged into the credit bureau portal I hadn't touched in over a year. My stomach twisted as each account loaded. There were 6 credit lines I didn't recognize, all opened between 2020 and 2022. 3 were in default. My score had dropped nearly 200 points. I was numb, then furious, then weirdly calm. I picked up my phone and called Marin. She answered on the second ring, bright and cheerful. "Hey, are you okay? Mom said you're still not coming to Maui?" I ignored the question. "Did you know Derek used my social security number?" Dead silence. "What are you talking about?" "He opened loans in my name. I have the paperwork. Marissa has it too." "Wait, are you serious? Lauren, you're always doing this, making drama." I felt something inside me snap, not loudly, just cleanly, like a twig. "This isn't drama. This is fraud." "You're just jealous," she spat. "You always have been. You hate that I get help and you don't." "I hate that I get used. Don't call me again." And she hung up. I sat in the silence of my apartment, the buzz of the refrigerator the only sound. I stared at the empty spot on the wall where a clock used to be. I never replaced it. Then I Googled Credit Fraud Legal Help Oregon. 20 minutes later, I had a consultation booked. I scanned the documents, made PDFs, filed them in folders. I named the master folder, Lauren, taking it back. The next morning, I got a call from the lawyer's assistant confirming our meeting time. I took the day off work, told my manager I had a personal emergency. She didn't ask questions, just said, "Take care of yourself, Lauren." At the firm, the lawyer, a woman in her 50s named Gina, listened quietly as I explained everything. I showed her the paperwork, the credit report, the emails from Marissa. She leaned back in her chair and said, "It's a solid case. We can pursue both civil fraud and credit repair, but we need to notify the credit agencies formally and open a police report." "Police?" I blinked. "I don't want him arrested." "That may not happen," she said gently. "But to get your record cleared, we need a paper trail. It's the system." I nodded. Filing the report was less dramatic than I'd imagined. No one burst into tears. No one shouted. I clicked submit and stared at the confirmation screen like it was a finish line, or maybe a starting line. That night, Marin sent me a message. "Marin, you really want to ruin my life over some stupid paperwork?" I didn't reply. Then, at 10:47 p.m., my phone rang. Dad. I hesitated, then answered, "Hey, honey." His voice was cautious, the kind of tone you use when approaching a wounded animal. "I just wanted to check in. Your mom doesn't know yet about the fraud thing. Please don't bring it up. Not before the trip. She's already stressed about the itinerary." "The itinerary," I repeated. He sighed. "I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying timing matters." I almost laughed. Timing mattered when I loaned Marin money, when I co-signed something I didn't understand, when I paid for Thanksgiving and no one saved me a seat. Silence. "I know," he finally said. "I just want peace. I want justice." We didn't say goodbye. The line just went dead. Afterward, I opened my laptop and adjusted the folder labels. I added one called Boundaries. Inside it, I placed a single document. Title: Statement, Lauren Ainsley. It read, I am not the fixer. I am not the banker. I am not the afterthought. I am not invisible. I printed it, taped it to my fridge. Then I made tea, and I waited. Because some storms you don't outrun. You just stop letting them sweep you away. I didn't go to Maui. I went to Seattle, and I brought lemon bars. It wasn't dramatic, really. No last-minute cancellation or explosive argument. I just didn't board the flight. Never booked one. I boxed up my sweaters, paid the security deposit on a one-bedroom near Green Lake, and told no one until after the lease was signed. Mom sent a message on Christmas Eve. Flight info attached, hope you're packed. I didn't reply. The morning they flew out, I stood in my new kitchen, the scent of lemon zest and powdered sugar in the air. The oven hummed, my radio played something soft and old-fashioned, and outside, the Seattle rain drizzled in its usual comforting way. Lemon bars. The last time I made them, I was 10. My great-aunt Jeannie had driven up in her beat-up Honda, wearing a coat with mismatched buttons and a smile that made you feel like you'd already said something funny. She brought over lemons from her neighbor's tree and said, "We need something bright today." That day was bright. In a childhood full of tension and, "Why can't you be more like Marianne?" it glowed like a little sun. So this year, I honored that day. I baked 4 trays for the community fundraiser my new job was sponsoring, a cozy, unpretentious event where people wore cardigans instead of evening gowns and said things like, "Oh, that's gluten-free? How thoughtful." At the bake sale, I arranged my lemon bars next to someone else's brownies and an ambitious 7-layer cake. A little handwritten sign read, "Made with joy and extra zest." David showed up halfway through. He was in town for a workshop, some IT security thing I only half understood, but he'd texted earlier. "Rainy City suits you?" "Like a second skin," I'd replied. He held the door open with his elbow as he walked in, spotted me, and grinned. "You weren't kidding about the lemon bars. Help me carry the last tray?" I asked. We didn't hug, just fell into an easy rhythm, like two people who'd known each other just enough, and not too much. "You look good," he said. "I feel okay," I replied. That was better than good. After the event, I walked home alone, box of leftovers in hand, heart strangely steady. It had been a year of fractures and silence, but this evening didn't feel like a void. It felt like space, like breathing room. Back at the apartment, I lit a candle, not for ambiance, just for stillness. There was a letter waiting on my counter from the lawyer. I opened it without ceremony. Derek's case was progressing. There were terms I didn't fully understand, references to restitution, identity fraud, legal precedents. But the phrase that stuck out, printed in bold, "Primary victim of misrepresentation, Lauren E. Parker." I stared at my name, not as a donor, not as a helper, not as Marin's sister or Ellen's daughter, just me. I folded the letter back, slid it into a folder marked Things I Handled. My phone buzzed. A message from Marin. No words, just a photo, her on a beach in Maui, wind in her hair, cocktail in hand. The caption read, "Nothing." The silence screamed everything. I didn't reply. Instead, I made tea, poured it slowly, pulled out a lemon bar from the box, not one from the fundraiser, but the extra batch I'd kept for myself. I sat by the window, the gray light filtering through the raindrops, and took a bite. It was tart, a little crumbly, not perfect, but it was mine. That lemon bar had no symbolism beyond what I gave it. It wasn't a revolution. It wasn't revenge. It was sugar and citrus and butter, pressed into a shape I chose. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone to join me. Not for approval, not for forgiveness, not even for closure. I was done performing love to earn it. I was done paying to be considered. I was done explaining the boundaries I was entitled to. The phone buzzed again. I didn't look. Instead, I opened the window just a crack, let the scent of wet earth drift in. A neighbor somewhere played jazz too loud. A dog barked 3 times and stopped. And I sat there, tasting sweetness on my tongue, thinking, this is how freedom starts. Quiet, simple, slightly sticky. With lemon bars. Somewhere between baking lemon bars and watching the rain fall in Seattle, I stopped waiting for an apology that would never come. And in that silence, I found something softer. Peace. Sometimes family doesn't always mean fairness. Love isn't proven by how much you give until you're empty. It's in the boundaries you protect, the small joys you allow yourself, and the courage to start over on your own terms. If this story reminded you of something you've lived or felt, I'd love to hear it. Leave a thought, a memory, or just a quiet nod. We're not alone in choosing better for ourselves.